Have you guys ever heard about art? It isn't to anyone's surprise how art has been able to captivate a major audience since the dawn of its inception. Known as the original NFT, we are given the opportunity to view pieces of art throughout history itself and the iconic stories that come with it as a whole. From the famous work of Vincent van Gogh to Banksy selling an art piece for $1.4 million, shredding it and reselling it for $25 million. And yes, I wish I was actually kidding. And while some of the most prestigious art pieces can sell for about the same amount as my college debt, what if I told you that there is a place dedicated for weebs such as you and I to buy pieces of prestigious artwork that relate to anime? For example, a hand-drawn shikishi of Gyro Zeppeli signed by Hirohiro Araki himself will cost you about $300 out of your own wallet. I swear this man can draw about anything and he can just turn a profit. Think of the whole anime art scene as buying a pristine Da Vinci piece, except that what you purchased is a humongous anime cat girl. This video is going to be a little different, as this video is meant to educate you guys. Today I want to go over some of the most expensive art pieces that was ever purchased that relate to anime as a whole. So if you guys are new, please consider subscribing. I do upload weekly stuff, and without further ado, let's get started. Before we begin, I want to go over the rules as to what constitutes as an expensive art piece. Number 1, the art piece has to be related to Japanese anime. Yes, I know that there are more expensive stuff out there that deals with animation, but you know, as an anime channel, I need to fulfill my duties as such. But if you guys are wondering what the most expensive animation art piece is, that has to go to Mickey Mouse's The Band Concert, which sold for a lovely $420,000. And number 2, it must be anime original. The anime art piece has to have some kind of anime or anime movie background attached to it. For example, a very prominent figurehead in the Japanese art industry whose name goes by Murakami Takashi, you know, the guy that made the flower, sold a piece of art called The Lonesome Cowboy that sold for $1.3 million. Now, for the sake of not getting demonetized, how do I put it? Your boy's naked. So that's why half of it is kind of censored. But my point being is that even though this looks really like an anime-ish character, it doesn't really have an anime show or an anime movie tied to it. So technically, it doesn't count. In May of 2020, the auction company South by hosted a manga auction that sold a lot of Japanese animation cells that contained some of anime's most recognizable characters. This original animation cell by Toei Animations showing Monkey D. Luffy smiling sold for a whopping $55,000, while this animation cell of Surprise Goku also sold for $55,000 respectively. However, the most expensive animation cell that's sold here at this auction goes to, dear god, this title is long, Saint Seiya Knights of the Zodiac opening animation cell. Sold for a whopping $75,000. Now, if you guys think that this is expensive, trust me, we've only just begun. Our journey now takes us to Mandarake. Mandarake is a famous Japanese store that sells a lot of goods related to Japanese anime as a whole, but this isn't just your regular anime store. A lot of their stuff is more on the high end, and if you want to buy some of their more high-end items, you need to go to a website called Mandarake Auctions, a website that I sort of found out that they have sold art pieces for some ridiculous amounts of cash, and I am here to share some with you today. Our first on the list is Hitting the Streets of Tokyo by Akira, which sold for $63,000. You might also be seeing a trend here. You know, why are people spending copious amounts of money on an animation cell? What is even an animation cell? The term animation cell or celluloid is a still drawing made meticulously by hand to where if you place enough cells on top of one another, it will create a sense of movement. It's technically the old-fashioned way on how animation was created, but what makes animation cells so expensive is, for starters, that animation cells are supposed to be thrown away. Animation cells left out for a really long time not only have the potential to be extremely flammable, but the paints used to make the cells themselves can be really poisonous. So in Japan especially, Japanese cells are treated as industrial waste and are meant to be thrown away. So in a way, having these animation cells in general is quite rare. And on top of that, if you have a striking image animation cell, like the one I mentioned earlier, you could really have an expensive piece that people are actually willing to buy. Now, it's really hard to define what a striking image is, but I can give you another example to hopefully give you a general understanding. Let's take a look at this piece called Mei and Satsuki in the Rain from My Neighbor Totoro. Honestly, you can't look at me in the eye and say that this is a pretty cool piece. In fact, this is so cool. Do you want to know how much this sold for? $84,000. You know, there are some really cultured people out there. And I mean cultured. Now, the most expensive cell that I was able to find on Mandarake auctions was this one called Satsuki and Totoro. While the previous two animation cells that I mentioned earlier sold for more than what was predicted, this one really takes the cake. This one sold for a grand total of, wait, what was the number again? $238,256. I mean, at this rate, you gotta give the dude respect. My man out here dropping 200 G's on My Neighbor Totoro merch like it's absolutely nothing. And thus concludes the cell portion of this video. Guys, if you have found any other animation cells that sold for more than what was listed, then please let me know in the comment section down below. We go from animation cells to something called comic illustrations, the rough drafts before the official publishing into manga or newspapers. While the most expensive non-anime comic illustration sold within the last 10 years sold for a whopping $2.5 million, the most expensive anime-related comic illustrations has to go to the original Astro Boy sketches done by the one and only Osamu Tezuka. I mentioned a lot about Osamu Tezuka quite a bit on this channel, but if you aren't aware of who he is known as the godfather of manga, the man responsible for pretty much starting the manga revolution itself. With a title like that, you can probably guess a general range of how much these original sketches of Astro Boy sold for. This one in particular sold for $300,000. Now, I would be lying if I said $300,000 is a lot of money, but there's very few people out there that can genuinely say that they own a piece by Osamu Tezuka himself. So in a crazy sense, this is kind of justified, and it doesn't really come off much of a surprise. In conclusion, while I was doing all this research, I found it really interesting how all these very unique anime art pieces are receiving the same, if not more notoriety than the traditional art pieces that we're used to seeing. While these anime art pieces aren't reaching the tens and millions of dollars, the fact that people out there can see value in this type of stuff makes me think that sooner or later, anime art pieces that are sold in the future will go nowhere but up. What I also learned by the end of this is to never underestimate anime fans. They are either extremely broke or they can afford stuff like this. There is no in between. Look guys, I'm a really huge history nerd when it comes to this type of stuff, and this really interests me. So if this also interests you as well, please like it and share what you thought about it. It really helps with the algorithm. And if you guys found anything that was more expensive than what I mentioned here in this video, then please also let me know in the comments below. This is the first video where predominantly my face is on the screen, so let me know what you guys thought about that as well. My throat's getting a little dry, so I'm gonna go now. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Better see you, okay? You better be there. Alright.